What would you do if your neighbors or friends were suddenly taken away? For many in Los Angeles last week, this became reality. On June 6, 2025, federal immigration officers launched coordinated raids, targeting Latino neighborhoods. Armed officers on familiar streets sparked fear and anger. Small groups gathered holding signs and chanting in support of those detained. As raids continued, protests grew. Thousands filled the streets demanding justice. The protests were raw and emotional, showing powerful solidarity. President Trump deployed nearly 5,000 troops, including National Guard and Marines, to Los Angeles. The city became a tense standoff, with military patrolling the streets, an image that stunned the nation. The show of force only amplified the protests, sending a message far beyond Los Angeles. Images of separated families and peaceful protesters facing soldiers spread nationwide. People in other cities saw themselves in those targeted in Los Angeles. Many saw the government's actions as an attack on core American values. What started as a local crisis was about to ignite a national movement. The spark in Los Angeles soon set cities across the country alight. This was now about who we are as a nation. The week had only just begun. If you found this story insightful, subscribe and follow for more in-depth coverage. Your support helps us bring you the stories that matter. The fire in Los Angeles quickly spread across California, igniting protests in cities up and down the state. In San Francisco, thousands marched near a federal ICE office. Tensions flared, clashes erupted, and over 150 people were arrested. The unrest continued, with determined groups gathering outside the San Francisco Immigration Court, refusing to be intimidated. In Santa Ana, hundreds rallied downtown as ICE raids hit their community. The confrontation escalated. Protesters hurled fireworks and rocks, authorities responded with tear gas, and the National Guard was deployed. By Tuesday night, Santa Ana's streets resembled a battleground. Congresswoman Lou Correa confirmed dozens were being held in local ICE detention, putting a human face on the conflict. Oakland joined in, with marches supporting immigrants and opposing federal policies. Each protest, whether thousands or just a few hundred, added to a growing statewide movement. The anger and fear were not limited to Los Angeles. From the Bay Area to Orange County, Californians stood up, refusing to let their communities be torn apart. The message was clear. California would not stand by silently. The state's resistance was now a beacon for the rest of the country. The movement was gaining unstoppable momentum. As California erupted, Texas became the next major front. In Austin, hundreds marched between the state capitol and a federal building, confronting the government head-on. The demonstration turned chaotic. Objects thrown, police responded with pepper spray and tear gas, and arrests followed. Governor Greg Abbott quickly deployed the Texas National Guard to San Antonio, escalating tensions with local leaders who hadn't requested troops. Mayor Ron Nirenberg publicly objected, highlighting a growing rift between state and city officials. The National Guard's presence before any major protest was seen as intimidation, but activists vowed to proceed. The stage was set for confrontation, with the nation watching. Meanwhile, Dallas and Houston saw their own protests and clashes. Texas was deeply divided. State leaders backed federal raids, while its diverse cities rose in opposition. The turmoil in Texas mirrored the national struggle over immigration and the soul of the country. The conflict was no longer just about policy. It was about power, identity, and the right to dissent. The wave of protests surged east, reaching New York City, where thousands gathered in Lower Manhattan. The city's diversity was on full display as people marched, chanted, and clashed with police. Dozens arrested, many more detained. Mayor Eric Adams warned that violence would not be tolerated, but the city's resolve was clear. In Washington, D.C., labor unions marched past the Department of Justice, demanding the release of union leader David Huerta, arrested in Los Angeles. Their pressure worked. Huerta was freed that day. Philadelphia saw 150 protesters disrupt traffic, leading to arrests and tense confrontations with police. Boston joined in, with crowds rallying outside City Hall and marching to the State House, calling for an end to the raids. The movement was now national, connecting people across thousands of miles in a shared struggle for justice. From the nation's capital to the Northeast, the call for dignity and human rights was impossible to ignore. The protests had become a coast-to-coast chorus. The protests echoed through the heartland. In Chicago, Thousands marched from a federal immigration court through downtown, even shutting down a major highway in a bold act of civil disobedience. The demonstration was tense, a car sped through the crowd, but miraculously no one was hurt. Clashes with police led to arrests, but the marchers pressed on. Chicago's spirit of resistance was unmistakable. In Atlanta, protests turned chaotic as fireworks were thrown at police, who responded with tear gas, the air filled with smoke and shouts. The next day, hundreds gathered along Buford Highway, a hub of immigrant communities, making it clear the fight was local and urgent. Atlanta's protests led to more arrests, but the city's resolve did not waver. The movement was not just coastal, it was national, felt deeply in the Southeast and Midwest. Chicago and Atlanta proved the opposition to the raids was everywhere. People from all corners of the country were standing up for a more compassionate America. The national story was growing stronger with every city that joined. The chorus of dissent was now impossible to silence. The movement reached the Pacific Northwest and the Rockies. In Seattle, a small but creative group blocked access to the immigration court with e-bikes and scooters, showing that even modest actions mattered. Their message resistance would be found everywhere, not just in the largest cities. In Denver, protests turned tense as demonstrators clashed with police leading to detentions. The anger and urgency were felt even far from the coasts. Seattle and Denver proved the movement's reach. Americans everywhere were united in opposition to the raids. The national puzzle was nearly complete. Walking through these cities, you felt anger, raw and righteous, at a government many saw as targeting the vulnerable. Stories of families torn apart fueled the protests, but so did hope and unity. Strangers marched side by side, sharing water, snacks, and solidarity. Union members in D.C. marched for a detained leader from L.A. Bostonians rallied for people they'd never met. The unity was empowering, turning fear into collective action. Yet, tension was everywhere. Police in riot gear, National Guard on the streets, helicopters overhead. Protesters risked arrest and injury but refused to be silenced. The mood was defiant. These raids would not be accepted as normal. Massive crowds shut down highways, small groups kept vigil outside detention centers. The protests were more than a reaction. They were a declaration of values and humanity in a time of crisis. Across the nation, people were determined to fight for the country they believed in. As the week ended, attention turned to what would come next. Activists planned the No Kings rallies for Saturday, June 14th, a coordinated nationwide protest echoing the spirit of the American Revolution. The rallies would coincide with a major military parade in Washington, D.C., creating a dramatic split-screen military might on one side, mass protest on the other. The No Kings theme was a direct challenge to presidential authority, especially the use of troops against civilians. President Trump issued a stern warning. Protesters would be met with very big force. The threat only strengthened organizers' resolve. Saturday would be a pivotal moment. Would the rallies remain peaceful, or would tensions boil over? The nation braced for a test of protest strength and government tolerance. The conflict sparked in Los Angeles was far from over. America was holding its breath. This week was about more than a single policy. It was about who we are as a people. The raid struck at the heart of American identity, prompting cities from coast to coast to rise up in defiance. Immigrant communities are woven into every corner of the country. A raid in LA felt personal in Philadelphia or Atlanta. Shared identity and linked fate turned a local event into a national uprising. Federal actions, troops in LA, National Guard in San Antonio, united protesters and local leaders against perceived government overreach. The fight became about more than immigration. It was about power, rights, and the soul of the nation. The alliances and resolve forged this week will not be easily unraveled. When fundamental values are threatened, Americans rise up. Together, their voices impossible to ignore. If you found this deep dive engaging, like and subscribe to Smarto Brains for more insightful explorations into sociology, economics, and social policy.